Welcome back to the Kicks and Picks podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, you see it's just Scotty and I on your screen. If you're listening on your favorite pod platform, Nick is not here. Forgot it was Wednesday, our recording day, out to a work dinner. So we are going to fill the gaps for him. We've got a couple of his picks, which he agreed to with the research of Scott and I. So coming off a winning week last week, Scott, do we have our updated? What were we last
I think
week?
we were 6-4 last week, about a
6-4.
unit gained.
Yeah.
But yeah, compared to I think the week prior we were 3-7 or 3-4-3. Like we had a couple just not great weeks in a row. So happy to be on the right side of things last week and maybe finishing the season strong.
Yeah, that unit picked up, puts us just about 2 units down on the season with 2 weeks to go. So we'll be hoping to at least pick up a unit each week and finish this thing even money. No shame in that with the way the season's gone. And you know what? If you're not losing money, it's okay. It's always nicer to win money, but we'll take not losing at this point. So we're going to do a little bit of an abbreviated episode since there's just the two of us here, and we'll whip around the Premier League and then Serie A. Premier League's last weekend of the season, title not officially decided yet, so a little to talk about there. Serie A, the relegation battle is still hot, and we'll talk about a couple topics there, and then we'll get into our picks of the week. So, Scott, starting the Premier League, City beat Tottenham midweek. I know there's a lot of memes around Twitter about, Son collecting a paycheck from Pep after the match, collecting his envelope and all those things, because does Spurs want to see Arsenal win the title? Probably not. Their chances of Champions League were slim going into that match, officially over after losing the match. But, those longtime rivals never want to see their rivals win the league, especially when Spurs came close a few years ago. I think they finished second, and to see Arsenal win, I think would be very painstaking for them. But with that, City has a very strong chance of clinching as they host West Ham on the weekend. Arsenal hosts Everton. Is there any chance that City just bottles this on the last day of the season, hosting a West Ham side with really nothing to play for, and really a team that's conceded quite a few goals in the last couple months?
Yeah, that's kind of like understating it. West Ham's defense has been almost non-existent much of the season. It's been really bad. I think they're like the 5th worst defense in the league, even though they're somehow still in the top half of the table.
Yeah.
Or close to it. So they've been, exceptionally bad on defense. And I think the way that City have been going, they're likely to score 3 or 4 more in this one. But I mean, like Arsenal fans, that's the way the cookie crumbles. As a veteran of trying to chase down a near perfect City side, this is just how it goes. If you think that Sun chance was bad, I'll bring you back to 2019 when I think it was Liverpool finished with 97 points, City finished with 98 points. City went like unbeaten their last 16 games in a row. And the goal that basically won it was a 30-yard strike from Vincent Kompany to beat Leicester City 1-0. And then a couple minutes later, Kelechi Iheanacho had like a breakaway in a similar instance of Sun. And missed. So like that's just how it works. Like you can't expect to gain ground on City in the last 2 months of the season. So I know I ruffled a little feathers when I kept saying I didn't ever consider Arsenal a true candidate for the title chase, and the simple reason was just that they were behind City for much of 2024. Liverpool did have an advantage, but they dropped that in April, so they've been pretty much out of it. And it's really been City's to win, I think, since probably March or so. So do I think Arsenal have a chance? No. West Ham, I think City right now are like minus 1,000 against West Ham. Like it's
minus
crazy,
1,100. It's
minus 1,100.
Yeah,
you can't even play.
1,200. Wow, 1,200 actually.
Yeah, it's just gonna keep going up. There's no chance. So I think it's over. Arsenal, you can try to rebound next year. I mean, the tough part is you have to kind of come to terms with the fact that, Arsenal, you've done it twice in a row now, so there's at least some consideration that you can continue and maybe make another challenge next season. But they've been pretty fortunate with injuries by and large. I know they lost Jurgen Timber to I think a torn ACL towards the beginning of the season, but your center halves have been largely healthy, and that defense is a real reason why they're still in it. Midfield, they haven't really dealt with too much. Declan Rice has been healthy much of the season. Odegaard has been, I guess he's probably the one question mark, but it's tough. If you have one key injury against the City squad right now, like you're not going to be able to keep pace. So
Yeah, it was always going to be a tough task, and the thing for Arsenal, like they've had a great season, right? I mean, you
Yeah,
look at their 89 goals scored, second best in the league to City's 93, and their 28 goals conceded, best in the league. Their goal differential is actually one better than City. They're plus 61, City plus 60. I mean, these are two sides that are like very, very strong sides.
yeah.
And that's just the way the cookie crumbles sometimes is like that those head to head results that you don't get against City, which they haven't for the last 2 years, and it comes back to bite them again. And I don't know, is the first tiebreak head to head or is it goal differential in
It's
Premier
goal
League? If
differential.
it's goal differential, so if by some miracle City only draws and Arsenal wins, it's Arsenal's title based on goal differential, then, right?
Yeah, I think
But
that's right.
you need West Ham to do you a real solid, and again, they don't have much to play for. They're playing out their
No.
last match of the season before summer break, or maybe some of those guys go to the Euros or Copa America. But
Yeah.
if you have any belief in Arsenal that Arsenal can get the job done this weekend and somehow clinch the title, I mean Arsenal's minus 600 on the money line. It's the team future at plus 900, but you have to get that result that we're talking about, which it all
And
comes down to City dropping points, which is very unlikely.
and Everton are no slouch. They've
Yeah.
been okay. Especially under Dyche. They're one to kind of set up a low block and absorb pressure and hit you with a counter. And if they get that first goal, then it becomes very painful to try to get the win. So yeah, I mean, and again, I'll kind of wrap it with this. I wrote about this when Klopp announced he was leaving. Back in February, but Jurgen Klopp owns 3 of the 7 highest point tallies in the Premier League, but he has just one title to show for it, and that's just
It's
because
crazy. Yeah.
you're up against a impossible to beat City team. I think
Yeah.
they're also the only team to score 90 points or more and not win a title, and they've done that twice. So it's just how it works right now. Until Pep leaves City, it's you have to be near perfect, if not perfect, in order to win a title. Otherwise, it's just going to go to City.
Yeah, it's reminiscent for me as a Roma fan of, I think it was I don't know, it was the 15-16 season, I believe it was off the top of my head. Whichever one it was during Spalletti's second spell as manager when they had their highest ever point total in Serie A, Roma as a club, and they still lost out on the title to a Juventus side that was just historically good, right? It just happens sometimes. Like you could have these great seasons and the other team is just a little bit better than you, and it's no fault of yours. And it can be very frustrating. So for Arsenal supporters, I can kind of empathize a bit because I know it's like to have such a great season and miss out by, I think Roma might have lost the title by 3 or 4 points that year, and Juve was just that good. And that's kind of what it feels like. So barring some miracle, I know personally as a neutral, I'd love to see someone other than City win the league. I just don't know if it happens this weekend. Considering West Ham with all the things we talked about. Now we mentioned Spurs, Scott, and the way they are now officially eliminated from Champions League qualification contention, with the Premier League only having 4 spots for this coming season. That loss eliminated them. It clinched it for Aston Villa. Villa, one of the really great stories of the Premier League this season. The different club. It's nice seeing different clubs qualify, because you're used to the same 5-6 clubs generally getting those Champions League spots. And with Chelsea down a bit and Spurs down a little bit, and even though they rebounded the season, and also United, it's opened up that spot. Last year we saw Newcastle get in. This year it is Aston Villa. So if we just look ahead, we don't know what they're going to do in the market. We don't know how they're going to reinforce and all that. But looking ahead to next season, they would be, I don't know how the pots are going to change in Champions League. I don't know if they'd be a pot 4 team or if pots really matter as much with the expanded tournament. But what do we think of their prospects at the moment in terms of like Champions League, being a club that hasn't been there? Really, I don't know if they've ever been there at quite some time. I'm not sure off the top of my head, but not a traditional Champions League type club from the Premier League.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first assumption we're have to make is, like you said, like their roster will have to stay somewhat intact, and I think there's obviously a good chance that they might get picked apart a little bit. You could see, I know Boubacar Kamara has been, thrown about as a defensive mid replacement to some of these bigger clubs. Douglas Luiz, I could see moving on, and Ollie Watkins has been their key guy, and
Yeah.
there's no shortage of clubs looking for key strikers right now. So we'll assume that they keep, the core together. I think the biggest challenge that they're going to face is kind of what you just mentioned, is it's a different format this year. So you can't be one of these clubs that maybe sneaks into pot 3 and then you get, a weaker pot 2 draw, or even like a pot 1 draw that's favorable. And now all of a sudden you can kind of squeeze into the knockouts by, finishing second in your group.
Yeah.
You're going to be playing, a whatever it is. It's a full, you play 5 teams twice, so a full 10-game match list, I think, and you're gonna have to finish in the top whatever 14 spots in order to advance to the next one. So I think there's certainly, potentially. I mean, I think they can potentially do pretty well. I don't think they're going to upset any of these like bigger sides like a Bayern or a Real or even like a Barcelona. But they could finish towards the middle of the top, the middle of the pack, and then maybe they can sneak in into one of those playoffs. But that's all assuming that they keep this core together and maybe get another piece. But I think that part is going to be the challenge for them. I think there's a pretty good chance that one of these guys gets picked off and goes to another club in the summer.
Yeah, and I just pulled up a graphic I saw online, and they are a projected pot four side because they don't have much European experience. And you're gonna have other clubs from big European leagues that are gonna be pot four as well. Bologna will be a pot four side because they are never usually in Europe. Girona, I don't know how that's gonna play out because Girona is also owned by the City Group, so I don't know how that plays out because I know teams you're not supposed to have like the same ownership group for teams. So I don't know how the City Group is going to like circumvent that rule or find a way around it because I'm sure they will find a way because you would feel for the Girona supporters if they aren't able to participate for some reason. But when I look at Villa, I think it's a great story. I did root for them, as a neutral to do well this year when they started off the season hot. I enjoyed those results they got around Christmas time against, I think it was both City and Arsenal. They really played spoiler a little bit and really for a while hung around pretty close to the top of the table. But I look at them similar to Newcastle in some ways this season, club that hasn't been at the Champions League level for some time. You're not used to playing in Europe. Now, they at least have some European experience this year in the Conference League. They did get eliminated pretty handily by Olympiacos, which is a bit of a surprise to me in the semifinals. So a little more experience than Newcastle came in with, but I think you're going to have to reinforce the roster quite a bit to have the depth if you're going to hang around the Premier League. I mean, we look at Newcastle this year; they're hovering around like closer to mid-table now. Those midweek matches will wear on you. Now there's even more of them, you mentioned, and instead of playing, I think 6, it's 10. You said so. They're going to have to reinforce. These Premier League clubs have the money to do it, but it's also, like you said, keeping around the guys that you have so that you don't weaken the roster before you can even reinforce, like an Ollie Watkins or Douglas Luiz, any of these guys. So be interesting to see. I think they are one of those clubs, and maybe the new format helps them because maybe the more matches.
I just looked it up because I forgot how many teams advance, and it's more than I thought. So there's 36 teams that will be in the Champions League, group stage or whatever you want to call it. Spots 9 through 24 actually advance into like a knockout, and then the winners of those play the automatic qualifiers that finish in the top 8. So if you're talking about finishing in like spots 20 to 24 out of 36, then I think that actually is potentially doable for Villa if they keep everybody together, if they keep that squad intact and healthy for that.
I think that new format could help in some ways a club like this. That
it certainly would have helped Newcastle this year for sure.
I think so,
they had a tough draw, and I think they probably would have finished at least in that top 20 or so teams out of the 36 that were in it this year.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think that is definitely something that is a valid point when you look at some of the other clubs that'll be spread around the competition. Probably better than a lot of these pot 3 sides like Zagreb and Fenerbahce and Celtic and Galatasaray and Bodo. Like you see them in a head-to-head against any of those teams and some of the other pot 4 teams. However they format these groups, I think they could definitely get through. So it'll be interesting to see, and we'll see. And what I'm curious to see if they can continue the success in the Premier League while playing 10 Champions League matches and maybe more into the knockout rounds if they get there. So just a couple storylines to watch in the Premier League as they wrap up the season. Moving to Serie A, Scott, relegation battle still very much intact. So we're looking at 2 matches remaining for pretty much all the teams in the relegation battle, and we have Verona on 34 points, Udinese on 33, Cagliari on 33, Frosinone on 32, currently safe. Empoli and Sassuolo in the relegation zone at 32 and 29. They would be relegated. Salernitana long relegated on 16 points. So the biggest one of that group is Empoli traveling to Udinese. I'm not going to pick a winner in this one because I do have a lock in this one, and we have a couple locks because I think Nick also has a lock in this one. But that's the big head-to-head. And then you look at some of the other clubs and who they're playing. You have Sassuolo hosting Cagliari, also a big one in the relegation zone. Um, and then you go down the list here, and you have Frosinone traveling to Monza. And those are the ones really to keep an eye on the relegation battle. Scott, when you look at this, what do you see now, especially in this Udinese Empoli match?
Yeah, I mean, so Udinese does have a little bit of an advantage where they are the draw kings, and a draw here does kind of help them. That puts them at 35 points, gives you potentially or sorry, excuse me, 34 points, which
Yep.
could be 2 points ahead of Frosinone, and a point ahead of Cagliari, depending on how those results go. Empoli, I feel like this is one where they kind of have to win. A draw could bring them above Frosinone, depending on how Frosinone's result goes. But you got to think that in a game where you're playing another potential relegation candidate, you have an opportunity to get 3 points in a time where points are absolutely at a premium. The only thing that's tough is they're on the road, so that those relegation like atmospheres we talk about in England a lot. I think that can come into play here. So um,
Yep.
I think I'm trying to figure out what kind of a match do you expect to see? Do you expect to see like a really closed off, cagey, like we don't really want to lose this, especially from an Udinese team where a
Yeah.
draw here kind of helps, or do you see Empoli just say fuck it, like we got to go for it, try to commit more players forward than they would, and that leaves things a little bit more open? That's what I'm trying to figure out where this
Yeah,
one
it's
kind of
it's tough
goes.
because both these clubs have been trending on the unders, right? Less than 2.5 goals and 5 out of 5 for Empoli, less than 2.5 and 4 out of 5 for Udinese. So I do think it's a bit cagey. But at the same time, you kind of have to go for it in some way, especially if you're Empoli. Does that leave you open to conceding a goal? Possibly. Udinese is not a great scoring team, but it is tough to go up there to Friuli.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I've seen Roma, have difficult matches up there plenty of times. And I both these teams have ironically conceded the same number of goals, 52. It's Udinese's attack is slightly better with 35. They're averaging about a goal per match, where Empoli's only scored 26, which really tells you why they're in the relegation zone. When you're
Yeah.
scoring way under a goal a match, they actually have the worst attack in Serie A now, even worse than Salernitana with their 28 goals, which really speaks volume. So um, I do think they will have to go for it. Are they able to find a goal? We'll see. Um, I do think it favors Udinese though being at home in this one, and Udinese then plays Frosinone next week, so they have their fate in their hands. Of all the teams in relegation zone, they control their own destiny the most.
Yeah, my sense is that I think Empoli at this point they don't really have anything to lose, right? I mean,
Yeah,
if you're just gonna try to go into the final game against Roma and have that be the one that potentially gets you out of relegation, like that's a tall task.
yeah,
So you really don't have much to lose at this point by committing a more attacking strategy at least, and leaving yourself open because you're gonna need goals, and I think that could be the difference, right? If they get that
yeah,
opening goal, and now Udinese is kind of on the back foot, we might see a pretty entertaining open match. So maybe
yeah.
stay tuned and see what Nick has for this coming up.
First goal could be huge for sure.
Oh yeah,
When you bet from that perspective, definitely. The other one is interestingly with Roma kind of faltering of late. Lazio is now only a point behind them in the table between sixth and seventh. And the big caveat here is that even though Roma has fallen to sixth and is now three behind Atalanta, who have a match in hand in the league with that fifth spot, which could be or will be a Champions League spot for Italy, most likely going to Atalanta. Sixth place could still get you a Champions League spot because Atalanta is in the Europa League final. And if they finish fifth and win the Europa League against never losing, as they're being called, which, in a one off could certainly happen, sixth place becomes a Champions League spot. And I had a little bit of a rant at the end of our Chiesi Totti podcast the other day in Across the Rome verse, where I said, if Roma finishes behind Lazio and Atalanta gets the job done on Thursday and Lazio gets a Champions League spot over Roma, I don't know if I could watch Roma next season. That would to me be unforgivable, considering they are hosting Genoa and then going to Empoli next weekend as their last two matches. To me, Roma has to win out just to ensure that if Atalanta gets the job done, you finish sixth and get that Champions League spot. The only way that sixth spot the sixth spot wouldn't go to Serie A is if Atalanta finished in the top four, then qualified. I don't know what the weird caveats are to the whole new formula, but I read that then it would go to Benfica or something. some team from another country based on some kind of, I don't know, setup
Probably
they
to go
have.
to
But
England.
yeah,
Watch Spurs sneak in.
yeah. But I don't think Atalanta catches Juve. Stranger things have happened because they do have a match in hand. But so assuming Atalanta, say they were to get the job done and somehow end Leverkusen's winning streak, right, or their undefeated streak, and Roma loses one of these matches or both, and Lazio pass them, I would just be beside myself. But Lazio's got the tough one. They do have Inter this weekend away. Do you see
Yeah.
a scenario where Lazio wins out and passes Roma, or Roma just drops points in both matches or something?
I mean, I can't see Roma dropping points in these matches. Like they're very, very winnable games. You got to feel like they're going to right the ship at some capacity. Now, with
And
that said,
Atalanta hasn't officially locked up fifth either. I mean, it's
no,
unlikely Roma catches them, but it's still, you have to play with the pride factor and knowledge that mathematically you aren't eliminated yet.
yeah. So I think the softer schedule here certainly helps Roma a bit. Um, that said, can Lazio go to Inter and win? We saw crazier things. Sassuolo beat them a couple weeks ago, so it's not like this is the Inter team that is fighting for the title. It's been
Yeah.
won and secured for many many weeks now. I think a lot of these guys have been planning their vacations and are just kind of pulling the calendar days off one by one, waiting for
Yeah.
their flight off to Ibiza or wherever they're going to vacation. So I could see Lazio catching Inter off guard a little bit, but man, for that to happen and for Roma to also drop points against Genoa or whoever, it's Genoa and Empoli, right? Those are the last two.
Genoa and
That's
Empoli, yeah.
I think that's a tall task. So I think that's the good news for you, Coach. Those are very winnable games, and that would be. I mean, when you want to talk about like all time collapses, like if that were to happen, like that's an incredible turn. And like the worst part about it for you personally is that Nick will be sitting here complaining
Yeah.
about Lazio being in Champions League and
Yeah,
getting
not
smacked
spending
by
money.
Real and like
And
being his old little bitch and moan self. So like
yeah.
that I would feel for you because that would be a pain in the ass. But I can't see that. That's a lot
Yeah.
of crazy things that would have to go right or wrong depending
Yeah.
on your perspective.
Yeah, I agree. So, and I hope I'm right. And for that matter, I hope Atalanta win the Europa League, of course, because it could benefit Roma. And if Roma could sneak into Champions League as the sixth Italian team, it would completely change the trajectory of Roma's summer spending and maybe
Mm-hmm.
next season. And it's something that now being in the Champions League for I think 5 seasons now has really hampered Roma in terms of finances, even more so than when they were there. So, yeah, we'll see. But I will be rooting for Atalanta. I've got to root for the Italian side, especially when it benefits Roma directly, potentially. So we'll see what happens on Thursday. Yeah. So let's take it to the lock, Scotty.
All right. I
Yeah,
will
kick
kick
it
things
off.
off. I'm gonna take one that if Nick was here, he'd also bitch and moan about, but I have my rationale. So we got the last match of the season for Liverpool. It's also Klopp's last game managing Liverpool. I'm actually gonna take Wolves plus a goal and a half. It's plus 175. Nick will probably yell at me, say take +2 at plus 120, but I'll explain why. Everyone's thought process is, hey, last home game, Klopp's last game, Liverpool are going to show out and get the result, get a big win for Kloppo and send them off in style. But to be fair, we've been saying that for the last 3 months. We expected them to show up, win the league, win Europa, do something, and they've really just faltered the last 2 months. And so I don't really see that changing right now. The key thing is their defense been historically bad. They've got, I think, conceded 22 goals in their last 12 matches. And when you're talking, Allison Becker's in between the sticks there, like that's a really tall task. So I don't see that changing in this like one game turnaround here. So I expect Wolves to get at least one. I could even see them getting two. It wouldn't surprise me the way that Liverpool's D has been going. So at that rate, you're expecting Liverpool to get 3-4 goals for this to miss, and I just don't see it with the way that Salah's been playing. His finishing has been poor. Nunez has been wasteful. Diaz holds the ball way too long. Jota's not coming back anytime soon. It also feels like it could be one of those games where Klopp kind of gives some of the younger kids some extra run out. It just does not feel like a very happy ending for Liverpool, especially when they have a history of some really sad endings for some of their legends. We don't really talk about Gerrard's last game against Stoke, 10 years ago. So I'll take the plus 1.5, and if I'm wrong, then at least it is a happy ending for Klopp. But
And hey, even at plus 1.5, Liverpool could still win this match for him, and you can still
right,
cash at plus
right,
175.
that's
So
what I'm saying. This feels like it's gonna be a
yeah.
close game through and through, no matter what.
All right, I'm going with Atalanta. Previously mentioned Atalanta at minus 135 on the money line at Lecce. I know they're coming off that tough loss to Juve today in the Coppa Italia final, and they have the Europa League final against Leverkusen on Thursday. But they officially haven't wrapped up a Champions League spot yet, and will be keen to do so here. Pretty much a win gets it done for them with the head-to-head record they have against Roma. Great bounce back spot to prep for Leverkusen against the Lecce side with nothing to play for. I think they get the job done at minus 135. I think it's a solid number against the Lecce side that lost to Udinese last week because really they're just playing out their last string of matches safe from the relegation. They literally celebrated salvation last week before the match and then went on to lose the match at home to Udinese. So that kind of says something.
Yeah, still safe though.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna do my Nick impression for Nick's first pick. I'm taking Fiorentina draw no bet versus Napoli. Guys, Napoli have been embarrassingly bad all season long. Like, really bad. And I just don't see any chance that they go on the road and pick up a win in this weekend against Fiorentina in their last home match of the season. There's no shot of that happening. Not to mention that the Viola have a Champions League or a Conference League final on Thursday. This is a great opportunity for them to get some momentum against a Napoli team whose defense has been bad. And we're going to just ride one more time. We're going to fade Napoli one more time this season, get a win, minus 135, draw no bet. Even if against all odds, Napoli get a draw on this one, you still got that protection. Taking Fiorentina, draw no bet.
Not bad. We'll see what the listeners think.
All right. My second lock of the week, not Nick's, mine, Scott. I'm going to take Manchester United. I'm taking them pick 'em at Brighton. So I'll tell you why. Pick 'em, it's plus 135 in the books right now. Draw no bet is like only plus 115. It's really like normally those numbers are off by like maybe 5 cents. But there's a big gap there this right now. So as far as I know, they're roughly the same bet. So look at your books, see which has the better line. But essentially, I like United. They've been playing pretty well in recent weeks, scoring a lot of goals. I know this is Brighton's last home game, or last game of the season, but Brighton's at home, so there might be some extra, I guess, effort, I guess, maybe for Brighton in this one. But just the way that United have been playing, I can't see them losing this one. Ten Hag is going to want to finish the season strong. He's one of those managers that, especially with what he's taken over at United, you really can't take your foot off the gas and let anything slide right now. So I think United can come out and get a win. It's plus 135, and you have a little bit of protection on the draw line just in case.
Yeah, I like that. They beat Newcastle today, United. I think they're the much more informed side. And
they're scoring again. That's the big
I expect
thing.
Goals in this one. I don't mind the over 3.5 at minus 130 in this one either, the way these two teams concede. I mean, they are both, you have the 8th place team and the 10th place team, which, you would think would mean you probably have more goals scored than conceded. No, not with these sides. United has a minus 3 goal differential and Brighton minus 5. Both have conceded.
United have like this makeshift back line right now, so they'll concede, but they've actually figured out how to score right now, and I think you just ride that.
Yeah, I think Brighton is ripe for the pick and to give up goals too. All right, so my second one, I can't believe I'm doing this, but I am. And after Udinese came through for me on Monday against Lecce, I'm taking them money line, even money against Empoli. I think they get the job done again in the direct battle for salvation against Empoli that we mentioned. Empoli is winless in their last 5 away matches. I think Udinese is playing well enough right now, unbeaten in their last 3, 2 draws, and then that win against Lecce to get the job done, get the 3 points. And like Nick, complained about a couple weeks ago, they're going to hang around yet again. Reminiscent of Everton in some ways in the Premier League. They've been flirting with relegation the past couple of years, but they just keep surviving. Yeah. It kind of has that feel a little bit to me, and I think they get it done. And I love it at even money at home.
Man, going Udinese money line when they love to draw so much, it's like you're playing with fire.
I know, but they got me 2 last week on the road, so I'm confident they could get a 1-0 or a 2-1 or something here.
Yeah. All right. Nick's second lock, he's going with Milan draw no bet at Torino. It's minus 120, so another good value play here. Neither of these teams really have anything left to play for, so we're going to consider that irrelevant for now. The fact of the matter is Milan are just a much better team than Torino. Just from top to bottom, depth, attacking play, you name it, they're just better. They should get a win here, especially with the way that they've been clicking the last couple of weeks. I think they've scored 8 goals in their last 2 matches, so if they get 2 here, I don't see Torino having any sort of chance, and then there's every possibility that they can get more than that. So we'll take Milan on the draw no bet line. minus 120.
All
All
right.
right. My final lock of the Premier League season, the last one. I'm going to take Chelsea minus 1.5 versus Bournemouth. It's plus 120. Chelsea are, said a bit last week, they're arguably the hottest team outside of Manchester City and Arsenal right now. They've been playing really well. They've been scoring goals. We just talked about, United getting a win today. Chelsea also got a 2-1 win against Brighton. So they're riding, a lot of momentum. They're scoring. Bournemouth are sitting pretty happy in like middle of the table. They don't really have anything. They haven't had anything to play for in weeks. I think they're also kind of ready to, ship off to vacation. They're safe. They're going to collect their paychecks in the Premier League next season, so they're all good. Um, with that said, weirdly enough, as much as we made fun of Chelsea all season long, there's a very, very outside chance that Chelsea can surpass Tottenham and finish in fifth for a Europa League spot. If they win and Tottenham lose, they will probably pass Tottenham on the goal differential. And then it's just kind of up to what happens to Newcastle.
That would be pretty wild.
Or sorry, not Newcastle United. So it's not likely, but there is a very outside chance. So they do actually have something to play for, especially with goal differential in play. So I like them to get a lot of goals here. I think Bournemouth, like I said, have checked out. So minus 1.5, it's plus 120. I think it's worth the risk in our last play of the Premier League season.
Yeah, I like it. I cashed in them at Brighton today. Only gave up a goal in the 90 plus 7th minute to Brighton after they were up 2-0. So I think they're like we mentioned last week, like they're trending in the right direction under Poch, especially going into next season. And the fact that they're even within, shouting distance of Spurs at this point kind of speaks to how well they've played down the stretch, like we mentioned last weekend. So definitely something to keep an eye on. And I don't know if Spurs drops points like you said, but it certainly just keeps it interesting as they travel to Sheffield. Maybe their parting gift to the league is is some kind of surprise against Spurs. Who knows?
There would be nothing more
Yeah.
Spurs though than to drop points, to just drop all points, like not even get a point
not even
out
draw.
of the worst team in the league that's been relegated for 2 months and letting their London rival surpass them. That would be crazy.
And that's like after Postecoglou kind of like called out the squad right after the match. Like he realized like certain things are fragile, and people are like, well, yeah, Mourinho said that. Whoever else was there said that. Conte, like like other managers have said this. Like the foundations aren't there, so that would certainly be a Spurs thing to do. Just like dropping to 7th place would be a very Roma thing to do. That's why I often compare my squad with Spurs in some ways. Sadly. So my last one for this weekend is going to be Frosinone draw no bet minus 135 at Monza. I'm going to another relegation battling side. I know Frosinone was fodder for a 5-0 beatdown at the hands of Inter last weekend, but I think they get a much needed result against a Monza side that's winless in its last 7. Frosinone fighting for its life. Monza just continues to play out its string of matches as a mid-table side. Give me the desperate side fighting for its life to get a result on the two-way money line. You got protection against the draw, and if they draw, it is what it is. You get your money back. Monza just hasn't been playing well. I mean, winless in 7 is crazy to me because they were a side that was really giving big sides a lot of problems down, for much of the season.
Yeah, I like the draw no bet here as well. I think it's in a match where or in a point in the season now where unexpected things can kind of happen a little bit more often as some teams are kind of mentally checked out, like Monza might be here. You kind of get yourselves protected. So I like the pick. All right, Nick's last lock of the week. I almost said season, but that's not true because we have another week for Serie A. We're going with Udinese versus Empoli. Both teams to score. It's minus 110. So we kind of talked about this already, but it's kind of a must-win game for each team. Maybe a little bit less so for Udinese, but any chance to get 3 points at the end of the season in a relegation battle, it's pretty important. And like we said, Empoli don't really have anything to lose here. So I think they're going to go all out for this. It should open it up a little bit more. And if they can get that first goal, we know Udinese love a good draw. And coach, you got them on the money line here, so they hopefully will win. It'll force them to kind of come out of their shell and attack. So I think this could easily be a 1-1, 2-1 type game. So both teams to score at minus 110. Usually you don't get the minus 110 numbers with both teams to score in either Serie A or England right now. So we'll take it here.
Yeah, and this speaks to both teams being a lot of unders lately. But I think, like you said, Someone's gonna have to come out of their shell. Someone's gonna have to try to win this match. Most likely, Empoli could leave them open. Maybe they get the first goal, and Udinese has to come at them. For us, with 2 locks in this match, we'll be looking for a 2-1 or better victory for Udinese. But hopefully at least one of these two will cash. So speaking of draw kings, we're gonna go with our pod lock. Another team that's been kind of draw kings this year, and it's Bologna on the draw no bet against Juventus at -145. Bologna's magical season was rewarded with a Champions League berth last weekend when Roma fell to Atalanta. It actually locked up a Champions League berth for both of these clubs as they're level on points in the table. The Rosso Blu slightly ahead on goal differential for on Juve, so a win here could lock up a top 3 finish. I mean, that would really cap off what has been an amazing season for them behind just the Milan side. Even a draw, they could probably get the job done because then Juve would have to pick up points next week or really pour on the goals, which they haven't done. Juve just played midweek in the Coppa Italia and won today. So I think things are trending for Bologna at home. And when you get them on the draw no bet, it's even safer. We like the Rosso Blu to get it done, finish top 3. That would be something for them. And then it seems like Thiago Motta might be jetting for Juventus if reports are to be believed, but would be a really strong finish. The Bologna side that has the second best home record in the league, 12 wins, 4 draws, 2 losses at home. We don't think number 3 comes here, and we think it's going to be a win here against Juve.
Nick's second team in Bologna.
Yeah, and he was on a rant today. They were showing the 23 players that Spalletti's kind of got as locks, and there's 3 more spots up for grabs. And Orsolini was nowhere in the graphic, and Nick said he is not happy about that. So if Orsolini gets left off the Italy roster, get ready for an epic rant probably coming up in the next week or two.
We have to crowdsource some funding for Nick's flight out to Italy so he can go, protest in person.
Yeah. I'll have to go to Coverciano and then just start like screaming through the fences at Spalletti.
Yeah, I'm down.
Yeah. So that's where we'll leave this one. Last week of Premier League locks, one more week of Serie A next weekend. So it might be tough to get 10 locks next weekend, Scott. I don't know if we have to just do a group locks or something. We'll see how many matches there are across Europe, but looking to finish it out strong. And we thank you guys for listening. Again, if you're listening on your favorite pod platform, catch us on YouTube, subscribe there. And we'll be trying to get a little more up on that with shorts and things like that. So please subscribe if you haven't yet. If you're enjoying the show, give us a like, give us a rating. It helps with all those algorithms, that AI that promotes the show. We'd love to keep growing this thing with you guys listening. So thanks again for listening. Catch you next week.